Hey, leaders, managers, executives, want to know how to keep your workforce strong and productive for the rest of the year? Hey, it's simple. Hire and promote the right managers with proven leadership competencies to run your company. If you want to take a deep dive with me on how to level up your leadership, understand who you should be hiring and promoting, and what it takes to be a leader that people will actually trust and run through walls for, all you have to do is join my Substack as a paid subscriber. It's only $8 a month. You'll get weekly strategies, tools, action plans, and direct support from me via chat and email. Subscribe now for the price of a cup of coffee, $8 a month. You can even expense it out. Link to subscribe in the description. Welcome to the Love in Action Podcast. I'm your host, executive coach, speaker, and author, Marcel Schwantes. I believe that when we show up with our full humanity to work and lead from a place of love, joy, purpose, care, and inclusion, it's going to make a radical difference in your leadership, your business, and your bottom line. This is a show about actionable, practical love, the verb, as a leadership and business strategy. Let's get rolling. Hey gang, welcome back to the show. Glad you are here. Hey, we got another one lined up for you. Okay, so let me set this up. All right, so back on episode 183, I featured Mohammed Anwar, the CEO of Softway. Softway is a very, I would describe him as a human-centered tech company, but I'm not doing enough justice. So they're not just a tech company, let me tell you. So I'm going to let my guests explain what they do later, okay? So let's flash back to 2015. All right, Softway had a truly toxic culture that literally almost bankrupted them. And so their leadership team vowed to bring humanity back to the workplace. So through lots of trial and error and a lot of determination, they rebuilt Softway from the inside out around their greatest asset, their people. So that executive team, Mohammed Anwar, Chris Pitre, Frank Danna, and Jeff Ma, they wrote a book about that turnaround story as a business from the brink of bankruptcy. And that book was called Love as a Business Strategy, okay? That book went on to become a Wall Street Journal and a USA Today bestseller. And I'm going to put the episode 183 in the show notes. You can, right down below, you can click on it. And I urge you to check that out sort of as a background to their turnaround story, okay, with Mohammed Anwar, the CEO. Well, the executive team at Softway has followed up Love as a Business Strategy with a new book called Love as a Change Strategy. Innovation, growth, and transformation, that's the subtitle. So Love as a Change Strategy. Okay, this book is basically a brutally honest inside story behind Softway's transformation, right? And so you're going to find everything in this book, okay? Powerful storytelling, all kinds of actionable tools. There's a lot of practical stuff, okay? And as you hear the stories in this book, you're going to find out that they're speaking truth, plain truth about what happens when you lead change from a place of love and not fear or micromanagement. And so it's truly inspiring for those of us that are in a kind of a change process to pick up this book. Okay. Now, of course, if you're a longtime listener, you know, we don't have a problem with love as a business or change strategy here because we know what it means. We're not afraid of using the word love in a business or leadership context because we know it works. So I am elated to welcome in two of the co-authors of Love as a Change Strategy from Softway's executive team, Frank Danna and Christopher Pitre. Guys, welcome to the Love in Action Podcast.
Thank you for having us. So glad to be here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, the only person missing is Jeff, so maybe the next book as a follow-up to this one, I'll bring Jeff in.
There you go. All four
Perfect.
voices.
And then we have bookends. Muhammad can start it up, then me and Chris, and then Jeff can kind of
you're in
round
the
it
middle.
out to a book three.
All right, we start the show like this. You ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll start with Frank. What's your story?
Yeah, so I feel like my story harkens back to, I use the word harken, so this is going to be great. Harkens back to my early childhood, and the experiences that I've had through my life have led me to feel like an imposter for most of my life. And my story really began in my early 20s when I got married. My wife and I are about to celebrate our 17th wedding anniversary.
Congrats.
And getting married very young, having children young, going through that process was transformative for me because I had a great family unit and family structure. And then joining Softway and meeting Muhammad, even going through the rough times and coming out of that season, I found the people that truly helped me become who I can be and to be the full version of myself. And so my story is one of feeling and being an imposter into becoming someone who I can see as someone who belongs. And that's something that I desire to bring to others as well, because so many people struggle with imposter syndrome. They feel like they don't belong in the places they're working in. They don't have the connections or the opportunities. And my goal is really to help them get to that place where
Mm,
they can have that true belonging, not just a sense of belonging, but experience that belonging that is so transformative inside of the workplace and outside of the workplace.
yeah, that's great. Chris, what's your story?
Yeah, so my story is a little bit different because I actually was a person who was destined to be in corporate America. So I was trained and educated to be, one of the people that we talk about inside of many workplaces where you move very heartlessly throughout the workplace, right?
Mm,
Like you separate and divide your head from your heart, and your business mind is all that matters. It's not about who you are and who you love. You show up to do a job.
yeah,
And fortunately, in my 20s, mid 20s, I've had a mentor, and she was the chief sales officer, and she completely changed that viewpoint. And then fast forward to me joining Softway, and all of it is shattered to where now I'm looking at the fact that you have to be who you are authentically every single day. And that is what people value the most in business.
mm,
And when you hide that, or when you sort of hide behind decisions and intellectualizing things and rationalizations and all the things,
Mm.
it actually reduces your ability to influence change and get outcomes and really lead a team successfully and sustainably.
yeah.
And so my story has been one of, being sort of a corporate robot to becoming one that really champions love, but also the need to be more human in the workplace. And I'll tell you that a new chapter was added this past October. So 2 weeks after our book launch, I ended up having a major stroke. And it was one that is really seen between the ages of 17 and 45. It's called a dissection, but it basically happens in your brainstem. And so you can't operate on it. You have to just basically go through the motions.
Ooh,
Um, but I can tell you that going through something that like that, and I guess being 4.5 months out, if I didn't have a workplace like Softway, it would have been a very different story in terms of what my return to work looks like, but also what it means to have a team that supports you as you are really finding your way back into living and being independent and walking on your own 2 feet, all the basic things that you take for granted.
mm, Chris, that's such a powerful testimony. And so that begs the question, how you doing now after the stroke?
So fortunately for me, it's been a very speedy recovery.
Mm,
They typically say it takes about 6 months for you to get back to some semblance of normalcy.
yeah.
But I'm here 4.5 months out, able to walk, travel. Fortunately, I didn't lose any of my major motor skills or my cognition, memory, anything like that. But it really impacted my balance. So I was not walking until the week before Christmas.
Mm, mm,
So now I'm able to walk unassisted. I'm able to do things that, again, for a really long time, I thought that I would never be able to do. I had vertigo and double vision. I still have slight vertigo, but that has reduced severely since the stroke. So it's now just getting back into, again, my routine and getting to independence and interdependence as much as I can.
It's almost can I call it a miracle that you have recovered so fast in such a short amount of time from
Yeah.
something so drastic?
Yeah. And let me tell you what my nurses told me while I was recovering. So I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks. First at a regular hospital, then I went to a rehab hospital. And several caretakers or providers who came into my room noticed that I had like there were so many flowers that I had to send some home with my family because it was just constant. And then I always had visitors. And one of the nurses, like one morning before all the visitors showed up, she's like, "I think you're gonna heal faster than you think." And I was like, "Well, why is that?" And she said, "Well, you have such a big community around you that it's going to force you to actually get better faster. And we see those results happen when you have that community. And when you don't have it, it typically takes a little bit longer. So I think you'll be back to yourself in no time. And you're going to do it because you have people around you that are pushing you and who support you and love you. And that wasn't just my personal friends and family. That was also my work family that was here, my team that came to make sure that I was taken care of, to understand what was going on, to be ready in case I needed to return to work and I wasn't 100% myself. So
Yeah.
it matters when you have a workplace where people truly care and love and show up in the times where you need them to. Oftentimes you can't even express it.
Yeah, yeah. And Chris, this is so powerful. Everything you mentioned is consistent with the research.
Mhm.
There's so many different types of research that point that when you are surrounded by a support group, a community,
Mhm.
and even more so in the workplace where we spend the majority of our awake hours, right?
Yes.
More so than our family and loved
Yeah.
ones, it would behoove leaders to create an atmosphere where there's care and compassion and belonging, all those things that human beings are innately wired, I believe,
Mhm.
to need, right? To survive as a
Yeah.
species. We need a tribal, sort of a tribal community that looks after one another.
You're absolutely right. It is a need. It's not a nice to have. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of times you go through education, especially in business, and culture is like a nice to have. It's something that you should work toward if you can, right? It's something you can do prioritize if the business is in trouble or turmoil.
Yeah,
And we think that that is actually the furthest from the truth. Without a positive or strong culture, it's actually harder to bounce back. Adversity becomes that much more scarier,
yeah,
and that much more formidable. And so when you have the ability to, create a culture where everyone is change ready, but
yeah.
also you can have a personal change that you're not even expecting or anticipating that requires you to be someone who is influential or someone who needs to rely on others to do the hard things so that you can sort of focus on your recovery.
This is wild. We haven't even gotten into the book concepts, and here we're talking about the book
Yeah.
concepts. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Universal. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Well, speaking of book, okay, before we take
Yeah.
a deeper dive,
Hmm.
um, let's talk a little bit about Softway, okay?
Yeah.
So, Frank, what do you guys do as a business, and maybe even how have you branched out beyond technology?
Well, Softway has been evolving every it feels like every few minutes. But since its original founding in 2003 by Mohammed in his college dorm at U of H, it started as a pure play technology company and then it shifted. And there's so much has changed. I think the story of change is really reminiscent of what we experience inside of business as well as new opportunities, new technologies, new advancements. We have to be willing to and ready to change. And that's been the storied history of Softway. So
Mm.
we moved from being a technology business, pure play, to more of a digital agency. And that's when I joined the company in 2014. Chris joined in 2015. And then we shifted from that moment because we were trying to figure out how to survive into being more of a consultative agency and a consulting firm that is people first. And now Software is really taking a heavier focus on AI and how we can transform organizations through the power of AI. And so we are now a people first consulting firm in the business of transformation, but specifically AI transformation, because we see this intersection of people, process, and technology of the culture, the environment you're creating, as well as the technology that's going to be shifting and adapting as the next major frontier and what we can bring to organizations and clients that are looking for this change. AI is this big word, phrase, term. Everybody's using it, and leaders are kind of. I saw a meme recently of just like someone just trying to pour like a drink down someone's throat. Corporate leaders are just sort of trying to shove AI into your
Mm.
workplace without actually communicating it, without actually validating it, without creating experiences that change beliefs, which is where we center on change inside of our book. We talk about how, in order to have real change and transformation, we have to experience new things. And
Yeah.
so if people believe that AI is here to replace us, then they are going to experience AI from from a presence and place of hesitancy and fear. And so our job in culture, in leadership development, or in technology or AI transformation is to help craft experiences that change those beliefs. And so how we show up needs to change, but it's only possible through those experiences. And so that's part of the I guess the DNA of Softway. It's always been there, but now our focus is a little bit more in that AI transformation space. And who
Mm,
knows, in the next 3 to 5 years, it may shift to something else.
yeah.
But we've seen this intersectionality of all of it working together because it has to work together. You can't have the technology without the people side because there's always going to be the necessity of change.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll get into AI a little more in depth in a few
Absolutely.
minutes here. But okay, this is for either one of you guys.
Yep.
What do people get wrong about love as a change strategy? And then the second part of that question is why do we find so many change efforts failing these days?
Chris, start us off.
Yeah. One, we love talking about this, so stop us if you go too long. Like, I will not be offended. But I'll just say that when we started writing this book, it was when we were going through our own sort of reorg and change, and like a lot of things were happening in our space. And we started looking at what people were talking about in terms of change management.
Mm,
Now we were surprised to see how old the practices were still, being promoted, and they were like 20, 30 years old, right? Like really old stuff. And we noticed that there was still a lot more on process and this assumption that humans are cattle and that you can just prod them, send them a message, send them something to do, and then they'll do it, and then you're done and check your changes over. And we learned then and we experienced and we felt that that was like furthest from reality. And also, change was still a big failure at many organizations, including our own. Our clients, people that we didn't work with, case studies, like it's just change is still the hardest thing. And we fundamentally believe that it's hard because we approach it as if it's this sort of technical, solution to a really adaptive or big problem, right? And it's like, it's not like turning off a server when something goes down and turning it back on and then things will be ready. It's more about understanding that you have humans who are going through something that is probably bigger than you think. Unfortunately, when you've been at the planning table for so long inside of a change, everything is has been with you for so long that you've gotten used to it. You've understood it. Understand the intricacies of it. You understand the value adds, the whys. You understand all of that. And then it's time to go to the impacted parties, and you want to do it in 2 weeks, 2 days, a presentation, an email, right? And it's like, well, they haven't been sitting with this for months, right? They don't have that same luxury or that privilege of comfort and sort of the time it took for you to get comfortable with it. And so we've been on this mission to really help unpack change
Yep.
and do so in a way that allows you to appreciate that it is a human experience first and foremost. And with change comes this need to understand that if it's a human experience, then that means that there are emotions involved.
mm,
When we start to ignore the emotions of change, we actually create the recipe for failure.
Yep.
And, certain things that we've understood is that there is a grieving that's going to take place. No matter how small the change you think is, you are still asking someone to let something go, to forego a comfort, to forego a way of working, to forego piece of their identity, maybe. And you're asking them to wholly and quickly adopt something new that they're still foreign to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so we consider change can be a little bit like grieving, right? Like, so we have to make space for that grief to take place, embrace a little bit more discomfort around it,
Yeah.
prioritize the relationships inside of it to make sure that we are able to bring people along the journey. And the other big thing that we have uncovered is that in change, a lot of times there isn't enough gratitude for what has been. And
Oh,
when
yeah.
when we introduce change, we make it seem like what has been happening has been wrong or is punishable or isn't worth it or wasn't worth it, etc. And we sort of, demonize unintentionally the people that were a part of the previous or the old.
Yeah.
And so making space for gratitude for what has been is a huge part of our approach, philosophy, mindset is that like we don't want to just come in and say like, all right, tomorrow we start something new. You've been doing the wrong thing. Get over it. Like here, take it.
Yep.
We actually want to acknowledge like what we've been doing has worked. It has gotten us here. but it's not going to get us there. But let's take some time and talk about what we've done, the successes, the achievements, the things that we've seen as a result of the hard work that has gone up until now. But now it's time to sunset and it's time to adopt something new. I want to invite you on this journey with me, right? And so we really take this, this idea that change can be so much better. It could be an experience that is memorable, that is fun, that is a lesson, that is something that allows for people to feel even more endeared to an organization if you intentionally set it up that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Frank, would you add anything?
And I would say that whenever a big change is upon an organization or a team, many default to what they know. They default to their methodologies, their processes, their checklists. They try to engineer the humanity out of it to get to the end, hoping that that will guarantee success. But the challenge here is processes are very brittle. They break under unexpected stress when the environment shifts, when, you know, the uniqueness of this particular change is bearing down. The process will break. And we know that the reason why change fails so often is because we start to rely on either outdated processes or processes that aren't actually serving the needs of our team and or our organization. So if you want to truly change yourself or your team or your workplace, you have to be okay with not having all the answers or knowing exactly how those things will play out. And what we ended up crafting in this book is a middle layer in between behavior change and the process, because we know that ultimately when we can change behaviors, that's when the real transformation can begin. But behaviors take a long time to change. That's what we wrote about in the first book. That's what we call it, like Softway's lore. If you want to learn about the lore, that's why I go back to the first episode with Mo. But we recognize that if the behaviors are there, we need some sort of guidance. We need some sort of, you know, pathway. And we wanted to create these principles that aren't necessarily steps in a manual, but they are things that can help guide our behaviors when things are unclear, when the road in front of us isn't actually as crystal clear as we want it to be.
Yeah.
And so these six principles that we introduce in this book are really intended to help be the in-between between the behaviors we want to see and the process ultimately that we want to get to, that can actually help guide us to change. And so these principles are intended to amplify our human capacity for change because they're crafted to be able to bend and flex when the unknown is driving us forward.
Yeah. I think you kind of set us up for those six principles. I'm wondering if we should kind of just maybe get into them a little bit,
Absolutely.
or
So
maybe some that just really float to the top, but they're obvious that okay, we need to implement this in a change process. What would they be?
absolutely. So I can just briefly mention the six
Yeah.
principles, and then we can talk about how they relate, right, to what it means to change. So the six principles are embracing discomfort, prioritizing relationships, practicing empathetic curiosity, wielding your influence, experiment, and be effective. So these are the six principles of change. And the beauty of these principles is they are all focused on love.
Mhm.
And what we're trying to do is help create this understanding that if you truly love the work or love the people or love the approach you're taking, these principles will help guide us in the
Yeah.
unknowns. And so I mean, we can start with embrace discomfort because I feel like that's really the starting point for many is recognizing that change, like Chris mentioned, is not only not just uncomfortable, but creates an environment of discomfort. And anything outside of our control feels uncomfortable. But the reality is, if you want to change, discomfort is the solution. It's part of the journey. If you want to make a change but don't feel any weight or impact, then you're not actually making a change.
Yeah.
And so the way I like to link it back to is going to the gym. The book I talk about, I went through a weight loss journey a few years ago and have been able to maintain that weight loss about 90 pounds or so. And that was as a result of consistency. But it is not easy to wake up and go to the gym every day when I don't want to. It is not easy to do the right things for my body that will provide me maximum health. I have to embrace that discomfort on a daily basis if I want to see change. And so that principle is more like a mindset. It's more like how you position yourself around embracing discomfort. And leadership needs to be able to communicate that effectively so that people can recognize that it's okay to not have the answer and that it's okay to be in this zone of discomfort collectively.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that doesn't typically happen.
Yeah. And I can think of so many bad things that can happen if you don't embrace discomfort because leaders that operate out of hubris and do as I say, or maybe there's so much this lack of authenticity, or whether that comes from shame or pride or whatever the case may be, they hide behind the mask and not face current reality, and that can lead to a lot of bad things, right?
Absolutely.
Chris, you're shaking your head.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things that I say is that if you are a leader who is about to implement change and you're not uncomfortable, that should be a scary thing. That
Yes,
should be an
agreed.
alarm for you. I truly believe that comfort is a privilege in change. And so if you are comfortable, that means that everybody else is paying for your comfort.
Mm,
And likely you are someone who is probably oppressing the team that you are trying to lead through change, and you've made all their decisions, and you've assumed so much about how that change is going to be received that you're not likely going to be open to pushback, questions, fear, and everybody then is going to be labeled an enemy and not a teammate.
Yeah.
And so when you start embracing discomfort, I'm not saying you embrace fear, right? Because I think some
right.
people,
That's different.
put discomfort and fear in the same bucket, and that's
Yeah.
not what we're saying.
Yep.
I'm not asking you to be fearful. You can still be a strong and sort of convinced leader that this is the right thing to do, but still understand that this is hard. This is going to require people to give up things that I didn't even bargain for or think about. This is going to require me to have conversations that I wasn't ready for. This is going to bring up questions I don't have answers to. That is uncomfortable. That is discomfort as a leader to look at your people who are looking at you saying, like, what are we doing about this? And you're like, let's figure it out together. I don't, right? Like, but when you are that confident that you are, as you said, in hubris about this change,
Yeah.
you actually create scenarios where your team ultimately is set up to fail. Be
And
honest, embrace discomfort, have discomfort, and if you still feel like, well, I don't have any discomfort, chances are you have little self-awareness about the situation,
Yeah.
oof,
and
Yeah.
yeah,
you're
that's
walking into a situation that is going to expose that to your team, and likely is going to mar trust between you and your team.
Yeah.
Chris is preaching right now, and I don't want him to stop. I want him to keep. No, but it's so true because the idea here is that we want to focus on the people side of change, and so often the technology or the process side of change is is decided upon, and the people is an afterthought. The people side of it is an afterthought. And so these principles are designed to say, okay, how can we support each other? How can we communicate? How can we grow together through this discomfort? Right. And really that's how we get to those outcomes we're hoping for. And so you're right, Chris. If the leader isn't uncomfortable or the not motivated to get to that place of discomfort, then most likely you're not going to actually see the change you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And comfort is the enemy.
Wow. Okay, so I'm thinking, how do we frame this without sounding like we're bashing leaders over the head? But and I say this because
Mhm.
so much of what I see in my world of coaching and consulting and training is that leaders are typically the blockers to change. Is that a fair statement?
It is.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
people aren't going to initiate something as dramatic or as transformative as change without leadership buy-in.
Yep.
And even if the leader says it in the way they communicate it, their communication and their actions are very different.
Yeah.
And so what we've experienced and we've gone through, and really where our book begins, is all of us talking about how we want others to change and no one wanting to change. Because we were going through this reorg and all of us didn't meet person. I'll talk about myself.
Yeah.
I literally thought to myself as we were talking about the reorg and where people were going to be going in our organization. We're not talking about pay cuts. We're literally talking about like title changes. And I was thinking to myself during these conversations, you can rip my title from my cold dead hand. I earned this thing, right? I was unwilling to change, but yet I was expecting others to do so. And that's where our book starts. It starts in this meeting that we're having where all of us are looking around the table, expecting other people to make the change and not actually seeing ourselves as the blockers to the change.
Wow.
And so that is so true. and so necessary for us to understand and have self-awareness around.
Because you brought up something I really want to make sure that
Mhm.
I iterate and reiterate, which is you're right. I don't want to bash leaders over the head or tell them that they're the problem. What I do want to illuminate or at least communicate is no leader that I've met is operating with ill intent for the most part. Yes, there
Yeah.
are bad actors out there, but that's not the predominant sort of mindset of leaders. Typically, as Frank put, many leaders are looking for others to do the thing, the hard thing, and that, they're there to support the hard thing, but not, oh, I need to go first, or I need to embody this first, or I need to model this first. And I think even personally, me, like I've had to rewire my own sort of frame of mind, say like, wait, I'm asking my team to do something that I haven't done. Let's
Mm.
pause and see what this looks like. What are they gonna like? How am I going to actually honestly tell them that I expect something that I haven't shown that I'm able to do myself?
Yeah.
And I think having those checks as a leader goes a really long way because let's say you are asking someone to do something that you haven't done, you can lead with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It changes the approach completely of how you go and ask. It
Yeah.
changes how you communicate and answer. It changes everything if you have that mindset. And so I'm not asking you as a leader to do the hard thing first if it doesn't make sense or if you're leading a team where you've never done their work before, right? Which is pretty common in many senior leadership roles.
Yeah.
But if you can acknowledge that you are asking someone to do a hard thing, then your voice should change. The complexion of your tone should change. Like you can approach it in a totally different way that is still, again, getting to your outcome, but you're inviting people now instead of commanding and demanding.
Frank, you guys talk about how change starts with personal transformation, and I think we've already alluded to some of
Yeah.
what the process of transformation may look like. But can you kind of bring that down a little deeper? I mean, what is the process of personal transformation? What does that look like?
It starts with a desire. It starts with an understanding that there's a place I want to get to that is different than where I am today.
Yeah.
And once we recognize that there is a place we want to get to, then we have to do the deep work of actually understanding, are we prepared for what it takes?
Mm,
Are we prepared to go through that storm?
mm,
Right. And so I think for me, what has been valuable is recognizing that when you have courageous individuals around you, and when we talk about embracing discovery, I know we're focusing on that a little bit, but I want to say like when you embrace discomfort, it's the presence of courage. And when you have other people that are able to showcase that courage, you're encouraged, right? It's a domino effect. And so what I love about the desire to create a personal transformation or personal case for change and the desire to change is that I also have surrounded myself with people that will hold me accountable and also support me.
mm,
That is incredibly necessary if you want to make a change, is you need to have people around you that are supportive. However, as we know, and I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, as we know, there are resistors to change. And
hmm
there are people in your organizations that are most likely going to be resistant to the change and unwilling to be a part of the change. And what we've learned from our own experience, what we talk about in this book, is that resistance to change can is most likely a sign that people aren't trying to push back for the sake of pushing back. It's usually a sign that people feel unheard and that their voice has not yet been considered. And so one of the best ways that we can create an environment of change where people feel like they can own the change, that they're not being forced into it, but rather they are part of it, to guarantee the success or get closer to that success is by embracing empathetic curiosity. And empathetic curiosity is just being able to withhold my own perspective and curiously asking those questions. When was the last time I actually sat down with the team that's going to be experiencing this change and said, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me, tell me what you're experiencing in this moment. Help me understand what this is going to mean for you. And we went through that same journey inside of our organization where a lot of team members we saw as resistance to it actually they just needed a time and space to be heard. And then they were not only on board, but they were influencers in helping promote the change itself.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole and yeah, I'm going to
Um,
ask you guys to come follow me. We might not want to. You might want to
I'm
stay at the
ready.
top, right? Like, no,
Listen,
we're not
side
going
quest.
down there, Marcel. But
Yeah. Side
So
quests
I'm
are my favorite. Let's go.
okay. Here's the rabbit hole. I've been writing a lot about and researching as well traditional egocentric power roles and people with positional authority in high level leadership roles.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that, well, most of those positions, and I'm generalizing, of course, is held by males, by men
Yep.
at the top of the food chain. And really, who we continue to place in those high level leadership roles, we're now seeing a rise in people with narcissistic tendencies and behaviors in just about every facet of society, all right, including the business world. And they're rising to the top. And I'm seeing that the majority of them are men, and they're setting the model for even women as well to mimic or well, aspire if they want to go up the chain and lead as executives and CEOs and founders that they think that they have to inherit the traits of this what I would call hypermasculinity, right? So in the business world, we know that traditional roles led by men, they usually push people hard and they add immense pressure and stress to the lives of their workers, right? And that may work maybe in the short term for short-term financial results for your quarterly numbers, right? If you uh, if you have shareholders, especially, right, that's important to them. But I'm thinking from a culture and sustainability perspective, it doesn't last. It doesn't last. So let's speak truth about, and so this is really the rabbit hole here
Yeah.
is speak truth about traditional male leadership roles in this day and age. We're not in the 70s, right? In 80s. And so this is for either one of you. I mean, what have you learned from leading through this kind of power, ego, narcissistic control? And how can we convince leaders to adopt a more human-centric approach as you lay out in your book?
So I think from a perspective of how I'm going to say this is my
Hmm.
personal response to this. We got to catch people while they're young. Um, I think, and I feel that in a lot of situations, I think Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build stronger babies than fix broken men. Um, and part of my goal of writing both of these books is like we need to get these into universities and colleges now,
Mm,
because it staves that, to me, influence and development that happens once you enter the workforce, where you are conditioned to think that that narcissistic behavior is the only way to get ahead, and it gets rewarded, right?
yeah.
The way that our systems are set up, it rewards that behavior. And if we don't get into a place of educating people that there are multiple ways to get to an outcome and that there are multiple ways to get results, but oftentimes, when you are going through sort of your growth journey in your career, you probably will appreciate more the bosses who resemble this versus that.
Hmm.
Um, and you get to decide at a certain point in your career who you will become. Are you the boss that leaves a mark or a scar? And I think if we have more of those conversations sooner before they leave, sort of that university or that academic setting where they have a little bit more malleability, they have a little bit more of a open mind to hearing different perspectives, that to me feels like the most opportune time. And
Mm,
you're absolutely right. Most leaders are still very male centric and they still are looking and rewarding the behavior that they feel wins in the workplace because it gets short-term results. And then, the question I like to put out there is like, if you look at the Fortune 100 list from 30 years ago and look at it today, where are those companies?
mm,
Where
They're
are they?
not.
Right? And so, if that way worked and continues to work, shouldn't there be a lot more longevity at the top?
And I'll point to mic drop number one. Sorry,
mm,
Chris. I'm going to be his hype man, but mic drop, and also look at attrition rates. In these organizations that are command and control and kind of hyper masculine, you're going to have a new workforce every 3 years because you got 30% attrition in your organizations. And what is the cost? And so predominantly men in organizations don't like to talk about culture. They think it's too soft. They think there's no time for it. Culture is the protection mechanism for your business and for your people, by the way. That's what it is. It's a safety net and safeguard around both your business and your people because people care about coming to work. They do great work. They care about the people they're doing work with. Guess what you got? But what we've experienced is that you have such high amounts of attrition. People don't like to talk about the culture, but they do like to talk about the cost of rehiring, the cost of training, the cost of bringing new people in. So let's talk about that for a second. And I think the big point here that I want to bring home, Marcel, is that
Mm.
we have to be very willing to understand the cost. And if we don't like to talk about culture, we can for sure talk about how much it's costing your business. And if you want to get profit and if it's EBITDA and focused on increasing shareholder value, that's going to come at a cost. And so we have to be considerate of it and consider the fact that there may be an alternate way of working
Yeah.
that is going to be better for humanity.
All right, guys, let's transition to AI. Here we go. Can
Yes.
AI really increase humanity and love in the workplace?
I can jump in and start. So we believe that there is an opportunity for AI to actually help us as humans become more human. And our kind of premise is that we have become very transactional in the workplace. Our time is spent answering emails, sending TPS reports, getting Excel spreadsheets rocking and rolling, focusing on stuff that honestly pulls out our humanity. It's sucking the life out of us. And what we see as the opportunity for AI is to step in and create a more humane work environment where a lot of those systems and processes and things that like fill our days can be pulled out, and what's left is an opportunity to create collaboration and conflict resolution and empathy and innovation.
Mm.
And so we see AI as an ally, not as a threat. We see AI as someone who can actually help individuals inside of organizations remove those monotonous tasks and allow them to do work that is more human
Yes.
focused. And
Yes.
so our approach, we call it a humane first approach, but we spell humane with AI in it because we're fancy, I guess. Our approach is really to start with the people side and evaluate the human element and to help invest in humans that can then invest in AI and feel comfortable with it. Because again, fear is one of those things that holds people back from change.
Right.
And from the human side, from the people side, that's where we get into evaluating and eliminating the technologies or the processes that are holding us back, asking those questions, challenging our assumptions around what needs to change. This business has been doing the same thing for 20 years. We've had the same systems in place. What can we be transforming that could actually help us from the human place, from a place of human transformation? And then we go through the opportunity of actually deploying and building that technology. But you notice when we start with the human side, we can use those principles of change. We can weave our approach from a place of humanity instead of, hey, everybody, we're going to have Microsoft Copilot as part of the new organization. Like our AI transformation strategy is everybody gets access to Copilot and there's no conversation or training about it. Enjoy. We can't do that. We have to be more cognizant of the human impact. And on the other side of it, we recognize that the humanity can prevail,
Hmm.
that we can actually do more together. Like, for instance, I used to furiously write notes. Muhammad talks about this too. We used to furiously try to write notes in meetings, and I wouldn't be paying any attention to you. I would be paying attention to the notes and trying to make a point. Now we have AI note takers in our calls. We have the ability to record transcripts with action items that are really good and like right where they need to be. And now I can focus more on a conversation with you.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about missing something. It's already creating those moments of humanity kind of breaking through. There's obviously an opportunity to do more, but we want to help leaders not be overly reactive to this technology and immediately think either I can reduce my workforce or I can implement this technology and everybody's going to go along to get along because it's something new and fresh.
Mm. Mm. So good, guys. It's been such a rich conversation. Hey, as we wind down here, is there any question that I have not asked that's really important for our listeners?
Like, did you stump me, or am I like searching for the hardest question that I think we've gotten about this book? Um,
Yeah. What question have I not asked?
Yeah.
Um, I'm having a hard. This is fun. This is fun now. I'm like worried. I think you've done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Good, good,
Like
good,
nothing that's
good.
coming to mind. Nothing that I feel like we haven't talked about in some way, shape, or form has
Yeah.
is coming to mind as a miss. So
All right. All right, good. All right. Well, let's bring it home then. Okay. Two questions. This is how we end the show. First one, it should be no surprise to you guys. So it's kind of interesting that I asked the love question to all my guests, and some of them squirm in their chairs as they answer, but I know you guys won't. So, how do we lead with more practical, actionable love day in and day out?
my background is actually in advertising, branding, messaging, that space. And so I believe in the power of words. Like if you can actually be intentional with your words, that can go a really long way. And I think one of the things that I like to tell leaders to do is really think about your one-on-ones, how you start
Mm,
those off. I've learned that when you start off your one-on-one with a message that's like, I've been looking forward to this. This is actually the highlight of my day. I'm really looking forward to understanding what's going on in your world. It invites a very different conversation, and
wow.
typically people will open up and be a little bit more honest,
Yeah.
upfront, and less sort of evasive about what's going on. But I think it's one of those things where it's like if you can be intentional about the words that you use with your teams, it actually unlocks this sort of like wavelength that you all are on around how do we actually share, trust, get to a better place with each other. And it starts with you as a leader being just very much more intentional with your words. Another small one is removing the term I know. When someone's telling something that you already know, it's very common that you go, "Oh, I know that. I know that. Oh, I knew that. Yeah, I heard that. Oh, I heard that. I know that." But switching that over to say, "You're right. You're right. That is actually correct. That you're spot on, right?" Those reaffirming and validating
Yeah.
words go a really long way to make people feel like you're supporting them, but you're hearing them, and you're assuring that they have the correct thing going on.
Do something outside of your comfort zone that gives you an opportunity to embrace discomfort by showing love in action. And so if that means complimenting someone that you typically wouldn't have said anything to, maybe writing them a note, being a leader that serves people in some way, it's also free. It doesn't cost anything to bring kindness, but also to bring unexpected joy to others. And it's amazing what happens when you're able to do that from that place of desiring to help others feel cared for and get that belonging, how much more people will fight for what they believe in and also for the place that you work in. So I would say do something for someone, something small. Doesn't have to be huge and it doesn't have to be transformative and it shouldn't be shouted from the rooftops. It should be secret and quiet and caring.
All right, bring us home. And I don't know, do you guys have any mic drop moments left in you? Here we go. Okay. No pressure. What is the one thing you want people to take away from our conversation today?
So I can start, and then Chris, I think we maybe can. I may know where you're going to go with this one, but what I want to share is be like the buffalo, and the reason why is because buffalo in nature have this beautiful sense of understanding what it means to embrace discomfort. I know that's been kind of the theme of our conversation today, but
Yeah.
something beautiful that happens in nature is when a storm is coming cows will actually run away from a storm. Okay, so as the storm is approaching, the cows will run away from it. And what unfortunately happens is when that herd of cattle is running away from it, they'll stay in the storm longer because the storm is chasing them. Buffalo have an innate sense that when a storm is coming, they run towards it. They run through it. They get through the hard faster because they embrace the discomfort of the storm in that first moment. They don't prolong the inevitable, they go for it because they know it's the right thing to do for the protection of the herd. And so that's the one thing I want to kind of leave your listeners with is be like the buffalo. Whenever there's an opportunity to embrace discomfort, go for it and don't kick the can down the road. But Chris,
Mm,
take the last word, man.
mm.
My biggest takeaway for everyone is don't manage change, lead it. I think a lot of times we've been taught that you have to have the checklist and the processes and all the things down packed. But as a leader, if you're leading change, you should be looking at it a little bit more big picture. You should be thinking about the humans that are going to be involved. You should be thinking about the outcomes that you might not even be planning for that could be a result. And if you are leading change, then you probably are doing a much better job of leading your culture and organization, and doing so in a way that probably is making them change ready. So that way, no matter what the future change is, knowing that we can't opt into change, knowing that there are changes that come because we, are reacting to something that has happened. And as someone who has recently gone through a major change, I can tell you that having a mindset that allows for you to be change ready and to, I think, influence others by showing how you respond in times of change, not react, but respond in times of change, goes a really long way. And that is to me the first steps of truly leading change versus just, building a change management process.
Gang, the book again is called Love as a Change Strategy, Innovation, Growth, and Transformation. Let's see if I can put that in front of my camera. There it is. Hey, I'm curious, is there a third book in the series in the making? Have you talked about it, or are we stopping at two?
No, we are already talking about and spinning up the story for our third book. You heard it here first. We are already discussing it. It is well underway to have a conversation with our publisher to move into the third book category. We already have quite a lot kind of structurally thought through, and so we are thinking about it. And if all goes according to plan, it'll be out sometime in 2027.
Gotcha. And that way I'll bring Jeff back to talk about
Jeff
it.
is the only person allowed to talk about it. Like
Yeah.
none of us. And we can all come to our podcast and just sit with our mute on and let him talk, but we'll just watch him.
Yeah, blank screen.
Just watch him.
All right. Point us to a few places where people can connect with you, learn more about Softway and its offerings.
Yeah, so first off, softway.com, softway.com. That'll get you to where we are from a technology and comms and AI perspective. You can also visit loveasastrategy.com. So not love as a business or love as a change strategy, but loveasastrategy.com. That will guide you to all of our book resources as you're reading through the books. There's different resources in each of the chapters, as well as our podcast, which is called Love as a Strategy as well. You can listen to where we interview folks in all different facets of the world and different things they're doing around love in the workplace in different ways. Again, not the HR violation side of love, but so softway.com, loveasastrategy.com, and then our books are most easily available, Barnes and Noble, Amazon.com, and anywhere else books are sold.
Fantastic. And gang, don't forget to check out episode 183 with the CEO of Softway, Mohammed Anwar, or as you guys will call him, Mo.
Mo.
Yeah, there you go. And
Easy
the link
enough.
is the link is right below in the show notes. Hey, this has been a blast, and I think it's been an important conversation, and we just need to keep banging on that drum. So I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that's all we got, gang. For Frank Danna, Christopher Pitre, and yours truly. Remember, in the end, love wins. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Love in Action podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it, subscribe, and leave us a review. Until next time, don't forget, the future of leadership is love in action. Believe it, practice it, and watch your leadership and business flourish.